If you're over 60, there's a quiet threat in your kitchen that most people never think twice about. It doesn't look dangerous. It doesn't smell. In fact, it's something millions of older adults reach for every single day, a simple piece of fruit. That's right, fruit. We've been told our whole lives that fruit is good for us, that it supports digestion, heart health, and brain function. But here's what's often left unsaid. Not all fruit is safe for seniors. And in some cases, it can actually increase the risk of stroke. I've seen it firsthand in the hospital. Older adults who seemed perfectly healthy suddenly face slurred speech, numbness, or paralysis. And when we dig deeper, the cause isn't just blood pressure or age, it's sharp spikes in sugar, inflammation from hidden acids, or clot-forming reactions triggered by the very fruits they thought were helping them. It's not about blaming food. It's about understanding how an aging body responds. Some fruits are too acidic. Some flood the system with sugar too fast. Others interact poorly with medications. And when the brain is already vulnerable, that tiny imbalance can be enough to tip the scale. Today, we're going to uncover 9 fruits that seniors should think twice about. Before we dive in, if you haven't subscribed yet, I recommend you hit that button and turn on the bell so you never miss another health tip made just for you. If you enjoy this video, type 1 in the comments. If not, type 0 to let me know how I can make better content for you. 1. Red grapes. The sweet fruit that could quietly lead to a stroke overnight. If you're past soixante, you've likely been told more than once to snack on fruit instead of sweets. And for many, red grapes feel like the perfect choice. They're natural, bite-sized, rich in antioxidants like resveratrol, and often recommended as a heart-healthy alternative to processed snacks. But what no one talks about is how these same grapes, when eaten at the wrong time of day, can quietly work against you, especially as your body changes with age. The issue lies in timing and how your body now processes sugar. Red grapes contain a high amount of fructose, and when you eat them at night, especially after dinner, while you're winding down, they quickly raise your blood sugar. That spike may seem harmless, even invisible, but inside your body, it's setting off a chain reaction. As your insulin rises to bring the sugar back down, your blood vessels respond, your nervous system activates, and your blood pressure can become erratic. For older adults, particularly those with stiffer arteries or underlying cardiovascular issues, that internal turbulence carries real risk. What makes this worse is something doctors refer to as the morning surge. Between 400 and 600 a.m., your body naturally increases blood pressure to prepare for waking. But if you've gone to bed with high blood sugar and hidden inflammation, this surge becomes exaggerated. That's when silent clots form. That's when oxygen to the brain can get interrupted. And that's when strokes happen quietly, in your sleep. I remember one patient, Mrs. Dorothy Lane, Tisha Wu, a retired school teacher from Georgia. Every evening, she'd sit down with a small bowl of red grapes and a crossword puzzle. It was her routine, something she believed helped her digestion and calmed her sweet tooth. But one early morning, she was rushed to the ER after her daughter found her confused. Unable to move her left hand, A scan revealed a clot blocking blood flow to her brain. Her blood sugar had been elevated. Her blood pressure had spiked overnight. And the only recent change in her habits, a larger helping of grapes before bed, she recovered slowly, but the lesson stayed with her. I thought I was doing something right, she whispered to me in rehab. And she was just not at the right time, not in the right way, and not in the right body. This is the reality many seniors face. Foods that once helped now require more thought, not because they've changed, but because you have. And red grapes are just the beginning. The next fruit on our list is even more popular, praised for heart health, packed with potassium yet for aging bodies. It can quietly cause circulation problems, dizziness, and leg fatigue overnight. Let's talk about bananas. 2. Bananas, the healthy fruit that may quietly trigger a stroke in seniors. Bananas have long held a reputation as the perfect heart-friendly snack. They're soft, easy to digest, and full of potassium, a mineral many doctors encourage to help lower blood pressure. So it makes sense that many older adults reach for a banana after dinner, believing they're making a smart, gentle choice. But what's often left out of the conversation is how that same potassium in aging bodies can quietly become a serious danger, especially late at night, and especially when certain medications are involved. After 60, your kidneys naturally begin to slow. They don't filter out excess minerals as efficiently as they once did. So when you eat high potassium foods like bananas late in the day, your system may not clear that extra potassium by the time you sleep. Add to that the medications so many seniors rely on: ACE inhibitors, beta blockers, diuretics, and you've created a risky combination. These medications already raise potassium levels. The banana, though healthy on its own, becomes the tipping point. Too much potassium in the bloodstream doesn't just cause mild cramps or palpitations. It can severely affect blood flow, disrupt the heart's rhythm, and in some cases, set the stage for a stroke. During the early hours of the morning, when your blood pressure begins to shift and your heart is meant to rise calmly out of rest, this hidden imbalance can cause blood vessels to constrict and oxygen delivery to falter just enough for a clot to form and lodge in the brain. I remember a patient, Mrs. Eileen Baker Tisserluke, a retired librarian from Oregon. She lived carefully, no alcohol, balanced meals, regular evening walks. Her nightly routine included a banana with a bit of cottage cheese, something she'd done for years. But one morning, just before dawn, and she collapsed in her hallway. Her left leg wouldn't move. Her words wouldn't come out. In the ICU, tests showed hyperkalemia, dangerously high potassium, along with low overnight blood pressure. She'd been taking medication for hypertension. And unknowingly, the combination became too much. The banana didn't cause her stroke alone, but it tipped the scale. Her family was stunned. It was just a banana, her daughter whispered, holding back tears. And that's exactly why these stories matter. The smallest habits, when combined with age and medication, can carry heavy consequences. Bananas aren't harmful, but your body at 70 is more sensitive than it was at 40. And while bananas may drop your pressure too far, the next fruit does something even more unpredictable. It floods your system with water and sugar, draining vital minerals and leaving your brain exposed during the night. Let's talk about watermelon. 3. Watermelon. The summer treat that can starve your brain of oxygen while you sleep. For many of us, watermelon brings back warm memories, summer barbecues, laughter on the porch, the cool sweetness cutting through a hot afternoon, and as we age, it becomes one of those go-to snacks that just feels good. It's light, juicy, and seems like a smarter choice than cookies or chips. But in older adults, particularly those managing heart conditions or taking blood pressure medications, that harmless bowl of fruit in the evening can quietly tip the body into dangerous territory. Watermelon is over 90% water. Yes, but it also contains a concentrated dose of natural sugars, including fructose, and acts as a natural diuretic. For a younger body, this might not be a big deal, but after treads, especially when combined with common medications like ACE inhibitors or water pills, this effect can spiral into something serious. Eating watermelon at night pulls fluid into your bladder, waking you up to urinate and disrupting deep sleep. What feels like a harmless inconvenience actually leaves you slightly dehydrated by morning. Now think about what's happening inside your blood vessels during those hours. As the body loses fluid, your blood becomes more concentrated. Your pressure drops. Your brain, now, running on thinner circulation, struggles to maintain oxygen flow, and for someone already dealing with stiffened arteries or slower heart rhythms, that early morning window becomes critical. Reduced oxygen, plus concentrated blood, creates the ideal environment for a clot to form. I cared for a patient like this not long ago. Mr. Frank Delgado, Tischersu, a retired railroad engineer from New Mexico. He was sharp, independent, and proud of how well he managed his health. Every night around 9 o'clock in the evening, he'd slice up a bowl of watermelon and sit with a crossword. Keeps me cool and regular, he'd say. But one morning, just before sunrise, he never made it back to bed. He collapsed in the bathroom, struggling to speak, unable to lift his left arm. The CT scan confirmed an ischemic stroke. His blood work showed concentrated serum, low sodium, and signs of overnight dehydration. Between his diuretic medication and that bowl of watermelon, the balance had tipped, a clot had formed, and oxygen never made it to part of his brain. He's recovering now, slowly, but reading is hard. Remembering names takes longer. And the heartbreak for his wife is knowing he was just trying to stay healthy. This is what we must understand. As we get older, the body doesn't just react to what we eat, it reacts to when we eat, how we rest, and what medications we take. And while watermelon seems innocent, its effects after dark can reach deeper than we think. But the next fruit may be even more surprising. It's tropical, bright, and often praised for its healing power, yet in the wrong body, at the wrong time, it can thin the blood enough to cause something much worse than dehydration. Let's talk about pineapple. For pineapple, the tropical fruit that can thin your blood too far and trigger a brain bleed. For many older adults, pineapple feels like one of the safest indulgences. It's bright, sweet, refreshing, a taste of the tropics without the guilt. It shows up in fruit bowls, blended into smoothies, or tossed into a summer salad And because it's often praised for its anti-inflammatory properties, many seniors reach for it thinking they're making a heart-smart choice. But what rarely gets talked about and what I've seen far too often is how this tropical fruit, especially when mixed with certain medications, can quietly become a threat to the aging brain. Pineapple contains a compound called bromelain. It's an enzyme known for supporting digestion and easing inflammation, but it also acts as a natural blood thinner. Now, on its own, that might not raise alarms, but in older adults who are already taking prescription anticoagulants like warfarin, Eliquis, or aspirin, bromelain can push that delicate balance too far. Blood that's already being carefully managed becomes too thin. And with age, when blood vessels in the brain are more fragile, it doesn't take much for one of them to give way. I remember clearly a case that still stays with me. Mr. James O'Neill, Boshasan, a retired chemist from Pennsylvania, thoughtful, health-conscious, and meticulous in his routines. After a minor heart procedure, he was placed on blood thinners, a standard, necessary step to prevent clots. He was diligent with his medications and INR checks. Then one day, he started adding fresh pineapple to his breakfast. It's natural, better than pain meds. He told his wife, and it was until it wasn't. One morning, she found him struggling to speak, his hand trembling, his gaze vacant. At the hospital, we found the cause, a brain bleed, not from a fall, not from high blood pressure, but from over-thinned blood. His INR was above the safe limit. That pineapple, combined with his medication, had silently shifted the equation. His brain couldn't stop the bleeding in time. James lived, but the stroke left him with partial vision loss and trouble forming sentences. He still recognizes faces, but often forgets names, even those of his grandchildren. That's why these conversations matter. Pineapple may seem harmless, but bromelain doesn't ask permission before interacting with your medication. It doesn't care if it comes from a fresh slice or frozen cubes. The enzyme remains active. It can interfere with clotting, increase the risk of spontaneous bleeding, and leave even a strong brain vulnerable to sudden, irreversible damage. If you're over 60 and taking heart or blood-thinning medications, don't treat pineapple as just another snack. It's more than that. And while pineapple may thin the blood too much, the next fruit swings in the other direction. Found in nearly every kitchen. It floods your bloodstream with sugar, pushing your brain into quiet chaos. Let's take a closer look at oranges. 5. Oranges and orange juice. The morning habit that may quietly prime your brain for stroke. For decades, starting the morning with a glass of orange juice has been almost sacred in many American homes. It's familiar, comforting, and for older adults especially, it feels like the right choice. It's natural, high in vitamin C, and has long been promoted as a boost for the immune system and the heart. But what's rarely explained, and what I've seen firsthand, is how this routine habit can quietly strain the aging brain and blood vessels in ways most seniors never expect. Oranges, and especially orange juice, are high in natural sugars and a potent form of vitamin C known as ascorbic acid. On its own, that vitamin can be helpful, but as we age, Our body's ability to regulate mineral levels, particularly iron, begins to fade. What orange juice does, especially in liquid form, is supercharge your body's ability to absorb iron. And when iron builds up in the bloodstream and tissues, including inside the brain and arteries, it can lead to something far more dangerous than people realize. This buildup contributes to oxidative stress, essentially rusting from the inside, which wears down the lining of your blood vessels and encourages plaque to form, especially in people already living with high blood pressure. Diabetes, or elevated cholesterol. Over time, it makes the blood more likely to clot. Add in a blood sugar spike from the juice itself, especially processed no-pulp varieties. And now you have a perfect storm: inflamed vessels, sticky platelets, and unstable glucose all at once. That's when small clots form and, in vulnerable adults, travel directly to the brain. I remember clearly the case of Mrs. Carol Fletcher Tisherbaugh, a retired bookkeeper from Kansas. Her life was quiet and steady. No smoking, no alcohol. But every morning, for over 20 years, she started her day with a full glass of orange juice. It helps with digestion, she'd say. But one morning, after breakfast, she noticed her left eye twitching, and her tongue felt heavy. Within an hour, her words slurred. She was rushed in, and scans confirmed a mild ischemic stroke. Her labs showed high ferritin levels, a marker of iron overload, and elevated glucose from her breakfast. She wasn't diabetic, but her arteries, already narrowed with age, simply couldn't handle the pressure. Today, she walks more slowly. She tires more quickly. And when we talked, she kept repeating, it was just juice. And that's the point. In an aging body, even the smallest rituals matter. What once helped can now harm. If you're over 60, especially with heart concerns or on iron supplements, it's worth stepping back from that glass and choosing whole fruits, if at all. And while oranges may push iron and sugar too far, there's another fruit that seems innocent, crisp, green, refreshing, but has its own hidden risk. Let's talk about the quiet damage behind green apples. 6. Green apples, the crisp snack that could quietly disrupt your sleep and raise your stroke risk. For generations, we've been taught that apples are the gold standard of healthy eating. That old saying, an apple a day keeps the doctor away, became part of the culture, something many of us grew up believing without question. And in many ways, there's truth in it. Apples, especially green ones, are full of fiber, vitamin C, and antioxidants. But as I've seen again and again in practice, even the healthiest foods can turn harmful when timing, age, and underlying health conditions are overlooked, and green apples are no exception. Their crisp tartness comes from their high acid content, which can be surprisingly harsh on the digestive system, especially in older adults. The problem becomes more serious when they're eaten late in the day. Many seniors treat a green apple as a light snack before bed, believing it helps digestion or avoids the heaviness of a full meal. But for those over 60, this can quietly become a dangerous habit. As we age, the muscle that separates the stomach from the esophagus weakens. It's called the lower esophageal sphincter. When that muscle doesn't close tightly, acid from the stomach can rise during the night. Add an acidic food like a green apple to the mix, and acid production increases even more. The result is nocturnal reflux, a condition that doesn't always cause heartburn. Instead, it disturbs sleep in subtler ways. You might wake up more often, gasp briefly, or feel an unexplained fatigue the next day. Your heart rate may spike, blood pressure may surge while your brain is supposed to be resting. And over time, that disruption interferes with your body's ability to repair its blood vessels and regulate clotting. This is exactly what happened to Mr. Pot, Alan Rivera, a 74-year-old retired engineer from Colorado, calm, thoughtful, and careful about his health. Every night, before turning in, he'd slice up a green apple and read for a bit before bed. It's light, and it helps keep me regular, he said, but over a span of several weeks, his mornings became harder. Heffeltfog had moments of imbalance, and once stumbled walking to the kitchen. Then one morning, his wife found him unable to grip his coffee cup. His speech slowed. Imaging confirmed a small brainstem stroke. His overnight blood pressure had spiked. His sleep was disturbed by acid reflux he didn't know he had. And when we reviewed his habits, that nightly apple stood out. It seemed so harmless, he said, stunned. And that's the truth. For many seniors, the smallest habits, when paired with a changing body, can have consequences no one expects. So if you enjoy apples, have them earlier in the day, when digestion is more active and your body can process acidity without disrupting vital sleep. But if you thought apples were the last surprise, there's another fruit that's often celebrated for its sleep benefits, yet in some cases, it may silently thin your blood and trigger dangerous brain bleeds overnight. Let's take a closer look at cherries. 7. Cherries. The sweet sleep snack that may quietly thin your blood and trigger a stroke. Cherries soft, rich, and naturally sweet feel like one of the safest pleasures in the world. Many older adults turn to them for relief from arthritis or sleep troubles. Tart cherry juice, especially, is celebrated for helping the body wind down at night. You see it on grocery store shelves, in wellness articles, and senior health blogs. And while cherries do have real benefits, what often goes unspoken is their potential danger, especially for people over 60 who are managing heart issues, blood pressure, or taking any form of blood-thinning medication. Here's what makes cherries more than just fruit. They contain compounds called salicylates, natural substances that act similarly to aspirin. These compounds prevent platelets from clumping together, which means your blood becomes slower to clot. Now, for someone young and not on any medications, that mild thinning effect isn't likely to cause problems. But for seniors already taking anticoagulants like warfarin, clopidogrel, or apixaban, this extra thinning can become serious. Blood that's too thin can't stop a small leak in the brain. And when that happens, a hemorrhagic stroke can begin quietly. I remember Mr. Leonard Hayes, a 77-year-old retired postmaster from Illinois. He was gentle, thoughtful, and well-organized in managing his atrial fibrillation. After years on blood thinners, He had everything down to a routine. But when his knees began to ache and sleep became harder to come by, he tried tart cherry juice, something a neighbor had recommended, just a few ounces each night before bed. At first, he felt better, less stiffness, deeper sleep. Then, one morning, his daughter found him sitting on the floor, confused. One side of his body, heavy and limp. At the hospital, scans confirmed a small bleed deep in his brain. His blood, it turned out, was too thin. The cherry juice had quietly added to the effects of his medication, pushing him beyond a safe range. He pulled through, but his gait changed. His speech slowed, and the vibrant clarity he once carried began to fade. His daughter sat with me one afternoon and asked, "Why didn't anyone say anything about this?" That's the heartbreaking part. These habits aren't reckless. They're well-intentioned, just missing one vital piece of information, and in older adults, that missing detail can change everything. So, if you're taking blood thinners or have a history of bleeding issues, cherries aren't just a snack. They're pharmacologically active and deserve the same respect you'd give any pill. And while cherries may quietly make blood too thin, there's another fruit, juicy and refreshing, that might be draining your electrolytes and setting you up for early morning confusion: dizziness and stroke. Let's talk about cantaloupe. 8. Cantaloupe. The hydrating fruit that can quietly drain your brain's lifeline while you sleep. Cantaloupe, soft, sweet, and soothing, brings back memories of slow summer mornings and light afternoon snacks. For many older adults, it feels like one of the safest fruits you can eat. It's low in calories, gentle on the stomach, and packed with water and potassium. That's why it's often seen as the perfect evening snack, something refreshing to enjoy after dinner, especially on warmer nights. But what most seniors don't realize is how this hydrating fruit, when eaten late in the day, can quietly shift the body's internal balance in ways that leave the brain vulnerable during sleep. Cantaloupe is more than 90% water, which sounds like a good thing, and it is in the right context. But for adults over 60, particularly those taking diuretics, beta blockers, or blood pressure medication, that water content doesn't always behave the way you expect when eaten before bed. Cantaloupe can increase urination during the night. That means more trips to the bathroom, which disrupts deep sleep and slowly dehydrates the blood. Your body loses water, but not always enough electrolytes to replace what's gone. And when blood becomes just slightly more concentrated and pressure drops during the night, the stage is set for slower circulation, clot formation, and in some cases, a silent morning stroke. I remember Mrs. Helen Grady, 80 years old, a retired seamstress from Iowa. She was diligent about her health, always checking her pressure, taking her medications, and eating clean. Cantaloupe keeps me hydrated, she told me during a visit, smiling as she packed a small container of melon slices for her evening snack. But one morning, her husband found her confused, her steps unsteady. At the hospital, we confirmed a small ischemic stroke. Her sodium levels were low. Her arteries, though not severely blocked, were narrowed just enough, combined with overnight fluid loss and slowed blood flow. It was enough to let a clot form and reach her brain before dawn. Her recovery is ongoing, but the change in her speech and sense of direction has been hard to miss. I just didn't see it coming, she said quietly. And that's the point. As we age, the body becomes more sensitive to even the gentlest shifts. Cantaloupe may seem harmless, but its water and potassium load can turn risky when the body is already trying to balance medication, pressure, and aging vessels, and just when you think the biggest risks are behind you. There's one more fruit, sweet, red, and praised as brain food that may be quietly stirring up inflammation and sugar spikes. Let's look at strawberries. 9. Strawberries. The brain food that could secretly spike your risk of stroke and cognitive decline. Strawberries, vibrant, sweet, and packed with color, are often seen as a symbol of health. They show up in everything from brain-boosting smoothie recipes to heart-healthy diet plans, praised for their antioxidants and low-calorie content. For older adults, they seem like a perfect daily snack. A handful with breakfast. A bowl with a touch of dark chocolate after dinner. It all feels light, natural, and good for the mind. But what most people over 60 are never told is that even strawberries, with all their nutrients, can quietly work against an aging body when the context isn't right. They do contain anthocyanins, which help reduce inflammation, but they're also higher in natural sugars than they taste. And for seniors with slower metabolism or mild insulin resistance, that sugar can cause real problems. A small spike in blood sugar doesn't just cause fatigue or fog. It sends signals to the blood vessels, asking them to expand, then contract. That tug of war, when repeated, often damages the fragile inner lining of your arteries, especially those leading to the brain. And when those vessels are already narrowed or stiff from age, it doesn't take much to trigger a clot. Not large enough to drop you where you stand, but just enough to steal your memory, blur your balance, or slow your speech. On top of that, strawberries are known for being heavily sprayed with pesticides. They often rank at the top of contamination lists year after year. Even after washing, chemical residues can linger, and for seniors already coping with circulatory or cognitive issues, those residues may quietly increase inflammation, disrupt neural signaling, and contribute to long-term decline. The kind you don't notice all at once. Just little things. A forgotten name, a lost step, a sentence that drifts mid-thought. That's why habits that seem harmless can have unexpected consequences. It's not about avoiding strawberries entirely. It's about knowing when and how they fit your life now. In a younger body, they may be fine anytime. But with age, digestion slows, blood vessels narrow, and reactions sharpen. What once protected may now provoke. So if you enjoy strawberries, have them earlier in the day. Wash them well. Choose organic when you can. And always consider what's already happening inside your body before adding more. Now that we've looked closely at these 9 fruits, let's shift to the foods that truly support your brain without these quiet hidden risks. Let's talk about what you should eat instead. Final wake-up call. What to eat instead to truly protect your brain after 60. After hearing about these 9 fruits that may quietly raise your stroke risk, it's completely natural to feel unsettled. You've spent years making what felt like smart, thoughtful choice is trading cookies for grapes, choosing fruit over processed snacks, leaning into what you believed was nourishing, and now you're realizing that even those habits, without the right timing or understanding of how your body has changed, may have been quietly working against you. But don't let fear take over, because your body, even now, has incredible resilience. The brain doesn't need perfection, it needs consistency. The kind that comes from steady, real food, gently absorbed and in balance with your age, your medications, and your rhythms. You don't need exotic powders or expensive juices. You need healthy fats as low-burning fuel and hydration that supports instead of overwhelms. Real healing begins with daily choices. Foods like avocado and leafy greens help reduce inflammation and stabilize blood flow. Eggs provide choline, which supports memory. Water, often forgotten, remains one of the strongest protectors of brain health, especially first thing in the morning. When your hydration is steady, your circulation becomes more reliable. When your meals include the right balance of protein, fat, and complex carbs, your brain gets the fuel it needs without the crashes. This is the kind of change that supports the brain quietly but powerfully. Small shifts in your routine, moving fruit earlier in the day, pairing it with a fat or protein, watching how certain ingredients interact with your medications. These are the details that add up. These are the habits that protect you not just today, but in the years ahead, because after treads, everything counts. Not every health food is right for everybody, and not every stroke comes with warning signs. Sometimes it's the seemingly innocent snack before bed or the sugary drink at breakfast that opens the door. The good news is you have the power to close that door again. To nourish your body with understanding, not just tradition. To live not in fear, but in awareness. You can still enjoy your meals, still delight in flavor, just with more wisdom. So take it slow, listen to your body, and honor this stage of life with the care it deserves. One thoughtful choice at a time. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a comment with 1. If not, feel free to comment with 0. Your feedback means a lot to us. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more content like this. Thank you for watching, and here's to living life on your own terms.